Welcome to the Cloud Accounting Podcast. I'm Blake Oliver.
And I'm David Leary.
So, David, did you catch the debates?
I did watch the debates.
Yeah.
It's must-see TV. That's like 5 hours of... It's like, remember in WWF would like put 20 people in a cage match? It's like that.
Hey, that's actually a very good analogy. My brother is in town from New York, visiting for a week, and he loves debates and politics. And he's a public school teacher, and he's also a Democrat and very liberal. And I like to think of myself as more in the moderate spectrum. I'm a registered Republican in California, so whatever that means.
A Democrat everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like a Bush 1 Republican, which is kind of a weird thing to be because I'm not like a Trump guy. So it's been interesting watching the debates. I'm a big Andrew Yang fan. We've talked about him on the podcast
because he's all about the bots are going to take our jobs. We need universal basic income. Yeah, he's talked about a lot of things we talk about.
Yes, exactly. And he's the only one talking about automation in any like meaningful way, like the humongous like societal threat that automation poses. And I've actually got a story along those lines that I will not forget to bring up because it does tie back to the debate with Andrew Yang.
I think he was the only one that brought up the point that he's like, this is like a reality TV show. And look what happened last time. We got a reality TV star as president. I think that was one of his lines in the debate, which I thought was an interesting observation.
It's good. He doesn't get a lot of time, It's like you can tell the moderators are like, all right, enough from you, Yang. We know you're a one issue candidate. So, we're going to get back to the real debate. But anyway, I hope he keeps going as long as he can.
Hey, I did my part. I went in and I donated $5 to about 6 or 7 of the candidates because they have to hit that threshold to stay in the debate. So I did my part and donated to about 6 or 7 candidates to keep them into the debate because it's entertaining. Like they should be on every week. I'd tune in. Yeah, no,
very good. Please let's keep this going. So everybody, please donate to all those 1% candidates so they can get, what is it they have to get now to, like 2% or? They have to get 2% polling in order to continue.
In the 130,000 individual donations or something. Yeah,
it's one of the either one. Got it. So we'll talk about a little bit about automation. We also, of course, have to talk about the ongoing malware security, QuickBooks hacking thing that's going on.
There's more malware. I got some QuickBooks Live news.
QuickBooks Live.
A little bit of news about the payments. And that's about it. I don't have a ton of articles this week, but I'm nicely prepared, though. What about you?
I got a few more small stories like Google Sheets has new features. Here's a survey about how many firms are using instant messaging with their clients, how much businesses are spending as a percentage of revenue to manage taxes. I think there's a real interesting value pricing lesson there potentially. And what else? Oh, how workers feel about robots and their jobs and automation in general. So shall we get to it with the security updates?
We got a review, though. So do you want to read that?
Let's do that first.
It's 5 stars.
This is from Mel Comer, CPA and outsourced CFO. Mel said, David and Blake do a fantastic job keeping the cloud accounting world up to date on important topics. Always interesting, sometimes controversial, and definitely enjoyable. Suggestions: would love to hear more about blockchain and cryptocurrency stories and how accountants are dealing with the challenges of having clients in that space. For example, show 100, they mentioned emerging companies who track cryptocurrency transactions for clients. Bitwave is one of those, and would love to hear you interview Pat White, the founder. This is a huge need for our clients. Thanks, guys. Awesome.
Well, thanks for the review and suggestions.
David, like every app, right? So I'm going to leave it to you to track down Pat from Bitwave.
All right. I'll track down. And actually, I think that might have been the company I mentioned that I met at the accounting show in LA.
Oh, cool.
So we can, track that down. If there's more news that makes sense. The one challenge I think with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, they're in every news story. So in every app talks about AI or blockchain or in crypto. So what bubbling into the news is what bubbles into the news. So, but I could definitely, we'll check it out. And Bitwave could be interesting. And I'll research a little bit on Pat White, the founder.
All right, so let's talk about QuickBooks hacking.
Yeah, so it was nice. We were talking about the how great TV is, right? And the news. Well, so we know a story is getting a little bit mainstream when Action News 6 Orlando is covering a QuickBooks ransomware attack story.
When you sent me this link, I thought it was just originally an article on their website, and it was written by one of their interns. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But then I realized they had embedded the video from the story up top. Like this actually was evening news in Orlando.
Well, the reporter went there. He did with the camera, with the microphone inside, in front of the business. Then he's inside the business interviewing the business owner. So it's like we always talk about this. Like there's this fine line of I'm in the closet talking to Blake about issues related to our industry, but I feel like when we're talking about stuff, it's because everybody's talking about it, and this is proof. So, what was interesting about this attack. And so this has nothing to do with the InSync attack, other than the fact that it's ransomware.
Right, ransomware, and there's QuickBooks involved.
There's QuickBooks involved. Now, what was kind of interesting that this attack, and then there's the TV news broadcast, but then there's also an article from healthcareinfosecurity.com. And so we'll put both links in the show notes. So a couple of things were interesting about this. It's a dental office, a dental practice.
Yep.
From what they can tell, the attackers did not do anything with patient records, medical records, anything. They only targeted the QuickBooks desktop data file, encrypted it with ransomware, and asked for a $10,000 ransom. And if didn't pay it within 48 hours, it was going to go up to $20,000.
The dentist, apparently he didn't have backups for about 5 months.
That's correct.
So he decided he had to make this choice. He said, okay, do I pay the $10,000 ransom or $20,000 if he waits too long? Or do I simply scrap it and have my accountant redo 5 months of accounting? And immediately after reading this, I said, it's going to be cheaper almost guaranteed to be cheaper to just recreate the 5 months of accounting. So that's what he's doing. But what was really interesting about this to me is that there's a mention in the article, not a whole lot of detail, but a mention that hackers are purchasing kits to specifically target QuickBooks desktop files on computers. And like you said, only encrypt those and hold those ransom.
Yeah, they're going after that data file because they know it's a business.
And they know it's valuable.
It's valuable, exactly. Because if somebody comes in and encrypts some pictures or something, you're like, okay, I lost those pictures forever.
And what if he didn't have backups at all, right? What if he had years of data in that QuickBooks file and hadn't made any backups or didn't know how to restore them? Then he'd really probably be forced to pay the ransom because it's so hard to go back many, many years to recreate your accounting information.
And it very specifically states he's going to pay his accountant.
Yeah.
Right. But somebody on Twitter tagged onto this and made a comment that, hey, this is a new service their accounting firm can offer. And if you think about it, as long as you quote the price under 10,000, you're going to get the business. You need me to rebuild your data file? $8,000.
Yeah.
So this actually is going to help drive revenue for accounting firms, possibly this malware attacks.
So how this relates to what we were talking about last week is that last week we were talking about the InSync ransomware attack and 3 other ransomware attacks that hit hosting providers, these managed service providers. This dentist, his name is, by the way, Carl Belancione.
Apparently, he, believe it or not, he was on Survivor once. He is a Survivor star, the TV show Survivor.
I thought that was a weird coincidence, but then I thought there's 20 years of Survivor, and how many contestants do they have? So there's a probably good chance that you personally know somebody who was on Survivor, right? At some point. Yeah, he was on Survivor. Maybe he actually saw this as a PR opportunity, right? He calls up the news station and talks about getting hacked. And now here he is getting, free advertisement for his practice, right?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure he gets that piece of it. One other thing that was in the article that was interesting is the Seminole County Sheriff, Dennis Lema, encouraged businesses to never pay the ransom. But then he went on to say that he's had 9 reported incidents of this happening in his Florida county this year. 9 incidents.
Wow. That didn't get news coverage. Yeah.
This is probably happening. And people probably think they're in a silo. And also, I think, which is interesting about this, do you think if you're a small business and this happens to you, it's a little embarrassing, possibly?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well, we know for a fact firms have been hacked, and these are accounting firms, and the partners paid the ransom and never told anyone because they didn't want their clients to know.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, this probably if this happened 9 times in that county alone, this is probably happening every day. All over the country, multiple times. And people are just not admitting it, or they're not advertising it. This guy saw an opportunity, and so it became a news story. But yeah, it's probably a massive problem. And when it bubbles up like this to TV news, then you know that there's something going on.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I didn't see any other attacks, out there, but if any of our listeners, if you've had your small business owner or your client has been ransomware, we'd love to find out about it. I think it's the only way this is going to get prevented is if people are aware that they're a target.
So I posted this story after you found it, David. I posted this on LinkedIn. Joy Lizotte said on LinkedIn that our local government or their insurance provider just had to pay $400,000 because of a similar situation.
I think I saw the city of Lodi right there in your backyard in California there. Not your backyard, I guess. It's way north. But apparently they admitted that they were ransomware a few months back, the entire city. So this is not stopping. It's just, I think for our industry, it's very obvious there is a target at QuickBooks data files.
Yeah.
So make sure you're making your backups or switch full-blown to cloud because this is happening.
And because this happened to a guy, so this dentist, he wasn't using a hosting provider. He had the file on his local network. Now, he did say that he had an IT firm that had secured it, but the hackers were able to get through that. So the question is,
if you read one of the articles, he actually thinks it was another dentist in the office who was shopping for wine on a website in France that got him infected.
Oh, clicked a download or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so the users are the weakest link, right? So the question is, should he have been using a hosting provider, even though hosting providers themselves are at risk? And I don't know how you feel, David, but I still think he's better off using hosting. Well, he's better off going to online, QuickBooks Online, and not having to deal with this issue. But if he's got to keep the desktop for whatever reason, then go to a hosting provider. Just make sure it's one that's like at the top of the pack. I mean, I don't know what else to do.
If you have reliable backup procedure, right? So you're making a backup on a daily basis, right? You're making backup your QuickBooks data, but then you're doing periodic backups. Like every week, I make a backup and I take that home and I put it in my safe at home or something. And then every quarter, I take a backup and I take that backup and I store it at my accountant's office and they're safe or something, right? And
every year, I make a backup and I bury it in my backyard.
Something, right? As long as you have you're keeping all these backups. If you get ransomware, you're like, okay, screw you. I'll delete the file. I'll restore my new one.
It's true. Like, it doesn't matter if you've got daily backups. I used to make hourly backups when I had a desktop file that I was managing in my office manager days. And it saved me a few times from losing half a day of work. So, backups. So cool.
That's going to be the lesson here is to make more backups and don't click stuff. And the other thing he talks about in both his articles about thumb drives.
Oh, yeah. Don't plug in thumb drives.
And actually, I have to lock this down at my house because my kids take thumb drives to school. Then they bring them home. Dad, can you print this? I have to crack down on the thumb drives, I think, this year.
They disabled our USB thumb drive capability at work completely because of this.
Yeah.
You cannot use a thumb drive. I got a story here about LinkedIn and how accountants can use LinkedIn better thanks to some new tools that are rolling out. This was in Accounting Today. On July 23rd, Michael Cohn covered this new, quote, open for business, unquote, marketplace that LinkedIn is creating. Basically, if you're any kind of professional, you can now list your availability, industry expertise, skills, and geographic location, and indicate that you are, quote, unquote, open for business and ready to connect. So turning LinkedIn into sort of a marketplace for professional services. I don't have this available on my profile yet. I went in this morning to check and look. Apparently, it's rolling out gradually. So you might want to go into your profile and look. It should be there pretty close at the top in this dotted, there's a highlighted box, or it's got dotted line around it. And it will allow you, if you've been selected for this beta, to highlight your expertise. And then I guess theoretically, business owners can look for you and find you and hire you.
Okay, so I
don't know if they can hire you.
So I have a firm. I got to make sure I maintain my Facebook profile with my business hours there, and then do my Google business profile and my Yelp profile. Now I got a LinkedIn profile for my business I got to maintain.
Mm-hmm. But I think the LinkedIn one is actually more helpful, right? Because it's tied to your actual resume and your social. And so if you're active on LinkedIn, you should definitely be using this because it'd be a good lead gen tool.
For all you app developers out there, there's nobody wants to do this. So if you can build one app where I could just update my stuff in one spot and you'll go populate this on all the services for me, people would pay for that because nobody has time for this. Because then you change your business hours and I got to remember to go change it on my LinkedIn profile too. Nobody has time for that. This is just another hassle, but we'll see how that goes. Yep. The thing is though, any improvements to LinkedIn, I'm always welcome for because I really I have a lot of disdain for LinkedIn. So
got it.
You have to use it though. You can't not be on it.
Oh, you can't not be on LinkedIn. Well, I think I like LinkedIn. You're a little more critical than I am, but just for me as a resume replacement, I haven't had to print out an actual resume and give it to anyone for years now because LinkedIn is my resume, and any company that I want to work for will accept that. I don't have to give them some Word document.
Yeah, but it's the messaging and writing messages and doing posts. Like it's all flaky. It's all. Oh, it's and then the LinkedIn spam is the worst of all time. So
right, well, that is unfortunate. Yeah,
that's worse than any other. It's worse than the blind phone calls you get, the robo calls. Like LinkedIn spam is worse than robo calls. This episode of the Cloud Accounting Podcast is sponsored by BQE Core. As many of you know, I'm all about the niches and niche apps. Putting your business clients in the proper niche app is providing them with a 100% solution versus at best the 85% solution of a standalone accounting app. If you have clients that are architects, engineers, consultants, or lawyers, Core is the app for them to best manage their firm, increase their staff productivity, and ultimately increase their profits. You don't need to juggle between multiple apps. Core has it all in an easy-to-use, all-in-one app for project management, including time and expense tracking, budgets, forecasting, client billing, and accounting. Even though Core is an all-in-one platform, it still works nicely with the apps like Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, QuickBooks, Xero, and AccountWrite, offering you and your clients the maximum amount of flexibility. Core offers a full-function mobile app and recently launched a cutting-edge voice-based assistant for your smart speaker of choice. To learn even more about BQE Core, head over to cloudaccountingpodcast.promo/core. That is cloudaccountingpodcast.promo/CORE. Did I mention that BQE Core works great for bookkeepers, CPAs, and accounting firms too? So I got some updates on QuickBooks Live.
Yeah, let's hear about it. Yeah, those videos are crazy.
Well, before we jump in go that far on QuickBooks Live, I actually saw an update to a post about TurboTax Live.
Oh, okay.
So this article was originally published on October 12th, 2017, and was republished on October 4th, 2018, and again on August 1st, 2019 with updates.
Okay.
And so basically it's the hiring page to do TurboTax Live, which we've talked about before, is very similar to QuickBooks Live. Mm-hmm. The difference on this one is they talk about, and I'll read this straightforward. New this year is tax associate role to assist credentialed agents in assisting the preparation of 1040s. In addition to earning extra money on an hourly basis, tax professionals can take advantage of the benefits of being, ready, a W-2 Intuit employee and get bonuses, 401k training, and be part of the community. So it's a part-time job, or not seasonal job, but you are truly a W-2 employee. And I think from what we've seen this far on the QuickBooks Live side, it was more of a subcontractor situation, right? Not W-2.
Interesting. So most of the TurboTax Live people are contractors then, or are they W-2 employees? Because I thought they were part-time employees, but now I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, that's why the sentence, it does say new this year. So it's just going by our theory of QuickBooks Live is following the footsteps of TurboTax Live. It'll be interesting is there going to be an evolution of QuickBooks Live where some of these pro advisors that are doing QuickBooks Live could become W-2 employees? So continue on that, QuickBooks Live now has its own landing page. So previously, if you were shopping for QuickBooks Online, you got to the pricing page, you could set some sliders, and you could add on QuickBooks Live bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Now they have a true landing page. So small businesses their entry point to the QuickBooks world is through a QuickBooks Live bookkeeper, and then into the rest of the buying QuickBooks Online. And they are offering a free 30-minute bookkeeping consult. So on that page, you can just click, sign up, and you can start your QuickBooks Live process for free.
And we should say that the videos that they have added on these landing pages are very well produced and narrated by Danny DeVito. Yeah,
I would argue this is like a super level ad commercial for QuickBooks Live. And
should we summarize for the new listeners? Because we haven't talked about this in a while, and we've got a bunch of new listeners. Maybe we should kind of summarize what QuickBooks Live is.
The shortest answer would be it's like Uber for bookkeeping.
Okay, so I am a business owner. I need bookkeeping done, so I just open up my phone and
your phone or your QuickBooks Online. You can do a video chat with a bookkeeper, and they'll help you through whatever problems you're having. It could be a reconciliation, et cetera, recategorizing transactions. And what it's more like Uber is you're paying into it, you're going through into it. And just like Uber, every time I get a new Uber, I get a different driver. Yep. I'll probably get a different bookkeeper. So it's very similar to an Uber style model.
And I'm just scrolling down this page and looking at the pricing, because the pricing continuously changes here. Remember when we started talking about this, it was $200 a month. All these prices here, from simple start with live bookkeeping up to advanced with live bookkeeping, they've got 4 tiers. It goes from $410 to $420 to $435 to $475. So all in the $400 to $500 range. Interesting, like it's such a small range. They've really seemed to have fixed the bookkeeping price at $400 a month. It's really not changing. The only thing that changes is the embedded price of the QuickBooks software. Exactly.
Exactly. It's basically, it looks like right now it's for bookkeeping, no matter if you're a sole proprietor, right? Yeah. Or the size of your business, it's $400 a month, which is pretty much across the board.
Yeah. And the scope of services, like what is the scope of services these days?
If you watch the ad, this ad really truly demos the service. And my understanding is that this is a real small business owner and a real pro advisor that are both involved in this conversation. So this is the real deal demo of the offering. And what I like about this new commercial is in comparison to, and you may have saw this about 3 years ago, Intuit had a very, pie in the sky vision of kind of the future of QuickBooks Online. And it was like this Uber driver, he's driving his Tesla, and the Tesla is the big TV screen, and his accountant pops up on the TV screen in the Tesla. Yes. And he's talking about ordering flour for his bakery business that he also owns. And it was a little too forward thinking. Yeah. But this ad is very realistic, and there's screenshots and it shows the interactions, and I think it's truly showing the service. Yeah. It doesn't look like it doesn't have that like screen images simulated little piece of text that sometimes they put on ads. So if you want to see how it works, hit the show notes. The link to the YouTube video is in there.
It looks good.
And if you think about this, like this, chances are this is going to be a commercial. So bookkeeping is going to be a commercial. Do you know any other bookkeeping firms that are going to run a TV commercial during the Super Bowl? Possibly.
No.
This is huge.
It's going to be big.
And then for all those, because I think a lot of people, right? I think a lot of small businesses have this mindset of like, bookkeeping, I'll just have my secretary do it.
Yeah.
Right? In their brain, they've never comprehended like, oh, there's actual real people out there that just do bookkeeping.
Yep.
And this is going to educate the market that there's these people called bookkeepers, and they can help you with your QuickBooks.
Yeah. Every firm that has enough resources to film, like if you have $10,000 for your marketing budget, you should film one of these videos. It's not going to be as good. You're not going to get Danny DeVito to be, the narrate it, but you can do it.
You could get Blake. You
could get me. We did this when I was at Armanino. Xero came out. They sent a film crew out because I was a big Xero partner, and they filmed an interview with me and one of our clients and stitched it all together, very much like that, showing how we work together using Xero and some other apps. And it was really cool. And it's like something like that shows just how the service actually works in a couple of minutes is really valuable, not only for the prospects, but also for the partners in the firm that are going to be referring you work, because they need to understand how client accounting services works. So everybody should be doing this.
No argument.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
So I got another stat from CPA Trendlines from their surveys. You want to guess how many firms are utilizing a collaboration tool that includes instant messaging, David?
How many, like internally or with their clients?
That's a good question.
So I'm saying with their clients, 15%, and then maybe internally, 35%.
I think this is internally.
Okay.
The question is, does your firm utilize a collaboration tool that includes instant messaging, IM? Yes is 39%. No is 61%. So fewer than half of firms are utilizing IM. And I'm guessing the rest are doing email or something. And if they answered yes, you might want to know what tools they're using. 26% are using Microsoft Skype for Business, and 3% are using Cisco Jabber. And there's no other answers for any of the others. So it must be really, really tiny. I'm surprised Slack's not on there. It's kind of disappointing. We're big Slack fans.
I think it'll be interesting, like we talked about a few weeks ago, how Microsoft's Teams is really chugging along nicely here. That survey, it'll be interesting a year from now to see where Microsoft Teams is on that survey. I predict it'll be the number one tool accounting firms are using to communicate within their teams because they're already paying for it. They own it. They just have to flip it on.
And I wonder if maybe these results are distorted because a lot of firms are very small, like 1 or 2 people. And you wouldn't need instant messaging internally for that, right? But you could be using it for your clients. But like you said, that's way out, right? Before most firms are doing that.
Yeah.
Here's another app update. Google Sheets, the ugly stepchild of Microsoft Excel, but we really love it being in the cloud. I learned how to use Google Sheets before I learned how to use Excel, believe it or not. And they have added a few new. Yeah, I know. Sorry. I mean, I'm in that generation, David, where I had Google Apps through my university for free. And so that's what we use Google Docs, we use Google Sheets to do everything. And it wasn't until I got into the business world that I learned how to use Excel.
Did you ever use Lotus 123 at all?
Oh, no, that was not a thing.
I'm going to guess that you never used like WordPerfect DOS either.
I think we used it in like elementary school for newsletters or something like that. Okay. But yeah. So I'm a big Google Sheets fan because when it's something that you're used to from the beginning, right? It's very easy to use. And I love the collaboration features. One of the things that's been missing is some of the more advanced Excel features that you just can't get, especially when it comes to building dashboards for clients or for any project you're working on. And good news, they have recently released 2 things that will really help with that. Actually, 3 features that will really help with that. One is slicers. So this allows you to set up a filter on a sheet that any user can easily access without having to dig into the settings for the chart or a table. If you're filtering a pivot table, basically, and all of the charts will update automatically. And then the other feature is scorecard charts. So it allows you to key in on a few metrics and see in a box a really important number. So, maybe if it's an airline, like in this example here in the article, it's, base fare price and then passengers flown. And you got those right up top, like a dashboard you'd see in one of these apps.
Okay.
And then finally, they've got themes now. So now you can give all your charts a consistent theme and color. So basically, if you don't want to use a reporting tool, right, to create dashboards for your clients, you could probably do a pretty good dashboard in Google Sheets these days.
Well, especially because, there's a couple apps out there that you can connect. I don't know on the Xero side, but I know you can connect to QuickBooks and all your QuickBooks transactions go to a Google Sheet. So you could do lots of creative stuff from that point forward.
There's a ton of Zapier integrates with Google Sheets. Yeah, all these automation tools integrate with Google Sheets. And so if you can get it in there in some sort of tab where it's updating automatically, you could update a dashboard live. I mean, in the end, it's going to be more work maintaining than a reporting tool. But just for, a one-off kind of client thing, could be a great way to get started.
I have another story.
Okay.
Remember we talked about before in the past, I think it was my prediction of this year way back. If you go back to the January episode, when we did, is this is the year of instant payments.
Yep.
Right. Instant payments. I think even last week we talked about Gusto and their round, how Gusto is going to have employees that can be paid at the end of their shift, right? Everybody's going to instant payments. Well, so the Federal Reserve was in the news last week because they lowered interest rates, but they also made some comments about, I don't know if you know this, they run ACH.
Oh, right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, essentially, it all falls under the same. It's the Fed, right?
Okay.
So they pretty much design, they run, they do the movement of ACH, and ACH historically, because it's a government thing, doesn't really make profits. It just has to charge enough to cover the expenses, right? And that's why ACH is so cheap. And that's why people love ACH. Well,
a government program that actually works,
yes,
and is efficient.
It works so well, nobody wants to touch it. I think is the big thing. So a few years back, in 2015, they pretty much told private industry to build their own, quote unquote, something faster. So the banks did. The banks basically spent $1 billion, all the big banks, and they built a payments network that was faster. Zelle is a good example of this peer-to-peer instant payments, right?
Yeah.
But they kind of just built it for themselves. And so you have 10,000 other banks in the smaller banks in the US, right, that don't really have access to this fancy network the big banks work together to build. Well, what the Fed said this week is they're now going to create their own instant payment system. So on one hand, the big banks are pissed. They're pissed about this because it's going to cut into their profits, right? Because they can make a lot of fees on this long term.
Yeah.
And this is becoming very political because on the other side of the coin, so you think oh, here we go, this big business is going to influence government decisions. But on the other side of the coin, there's other big businesses like Walmart
Right.
that do not want to pay the banks these fees, and they want a free government program to move their money around.
Right.
And so you're seeing this this big debate, and that's starting to become partisan. And here we go. Elizabeth Warren worked her way onto the podcast again. And I'm going to read her quote. She's like, big banks want to force families to use their private systems, Warren said. So again, Elizabeth Warren, if you're listening and you want to come on the podcast, every week you somehow, in the bottom of the article, every week she somehow gets into an article. And there's another one this week.
Whoever is doing PR or comms for the Elizabeth Warren campaign is really on it, right? So they're in everything. So good for them. And
I have another related payment story. So we've previously we talked about Square. Everybody knows Square, those little white dongles you charge your credit cards, at food trucks, et cetera.
Yeah, the original mobile credit card swiper.
Yeah. And they're huge, right? Square's grown. Yeah. I've even said that they might be into its biggest threat in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. So they announced their quarterly earnings, and they talked, there's a little bit of numbers, and they made some moves. So one thing they did is they sold their food delivery business to DoorDash. But what they're really doing is they're doubling down on their ecosystem plays. And so their ecosystem is really their small businesses, their front-end consumers. They're now in payroll. They have a huge ecosystem of stuff. A couple of interesting notes. Their loans grew by 36%. They gave out 70,000 loans for $528 million in Q2.
Wow.
And thus far, since 2014, they've given out $5 billion in loans to small businesses.
Wow.
And then I think we talked a little bit about their cash card. So they have a Visa debit card for small businesses. Mm-hmm. So if you're a Square merchant, you're a Square food truck, and you go to buy your supplies for your food truck from a merchant that also uses Square, you can actually buy those with this Visa card and avoid all the fees on both ends. So
they're just transferring direct from one Square account to another.
Yes. But what they've done now, they've leveled this up. So now you can pay your employees directly to their Square card. So if you think about it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm a small business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Square has the money. Square's paying my employees. Square still has the money.
Yeah.
My employees are going to buy their lunch at a different food truck for somebody else who has a Square reader and paying that food truck. They've completely cut the banks out of the entire equation. Like the full ecosystem.
Yeah. So wait, at what point does Square have to become a bank? Because that's what it sounds like they are becoming at that point.
And we've talked about that in previous episodes. They are trying to do that, but if you think about it, I'm sure the banks know this is happening, but I think they probably never guessed it would happen. They're just being cut out of the complete equation. And that's all the stories I brought this week, Blake.
So I promised at the beginning of this episode I was going to talk about automation, and I specifically mentioned Andrew Yang and his platform. Are you familiar with Andrew Yang's platform, David?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it in the podcast earlier.
Yeah, we've done it in previous episodes. Basically, his idea is that automation is going to disrupt society to such an extent. It's going to eliminate so many jobs that are core to our economy, like truck driving, like fast food, like all these jobs with millions and millions of people, which, by the way, it's not so visible, but includes a good chunk of accounting. And so his platform is to create a universal basic income where everybody in the country gets some set amount of money per month that allows them to fulfill the basic necessities like food and housing. Sounds like a crazy plan, but part of me really loves it because you can do away with a lot of social safety net programs that are super inefficient just by giving everyone a check. And the way Andrew Yang describes it is capitalism that doesn't start at zero. So I like this, right? It's really interesting. Sort of one of my friends from college calls it Robo socialism. I just like the idea. I like that it's out there because I'm very attuned to the amount of automation that's going to disrupt society. And some other folks are talking about this too. There was an article on CNN.com called "The Robot Revolution is Here, Prepare for Workers to Revolt" by Carl Benedict Frey. This is in CNN Business Perspectives, and it was published at the end of July. And he starts out by talking about how in June, thousands of dock workers marched at the port of Los Angeles against the coming introduction of robotic machines threatening their jobs. Dock workers, by the way, are some of the most highly paid middle class jobs that you can get. And the dock workers in LA are so essential that they do really well, right? But it's a job that's also highly susceptible to automation. And it used to be like you had people who physically all they did was like load and unload cargo by hand. And now we have these giant machines that can do it, right? But the machines are still piloted, but now there's versions of those machines that are unpiloted, right? They're fully autonomous. So these dock workers who are left are protesting that. And I think they're it's a good example of the, social unrest that will potentially occur when more and more stuff gets automated, right? And these good middle wage jobs start to disappear. One of the stats in this article is a Pew Research survey stat that says a staggering 85% of Americans support policies to restrict the rise of robots. And then, of course, he mentions Andrew Yang, who is running to, he actually, I think, misunderstands Andrew Yang's platform. He says he's running to protect jobs from automation, where actually he's running to create like a safety net to protect people from automation. But, same idea.
Because I think Andrew Yang's take is it's inevitable. It's
inevitable. Yeah. You can't stop it.
And in the short term, for sure, people will lose their jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's going to be new jobs created that we can't even imagine yet, but definitely in the short term.
And that's what this article is all about. It's a great read. So it uses the Industrial Revolution as something to look back on and see what can we expect from the automation that's going to happen. Because automation with AI is likely going to be as amazing, but also as disruptive as the Industrial Revolution was. And if you're a student of history, you may recall the Luddites, who were famous for smashing machinery and rioting and destroying all this automation during the Industrial Revolution between 1811 and 1816. But they were just one small part of all these machinery riots that swept across Britain, France, Germany, and China, among other places. There was a lot of growth. Output per worker grew by 46% during the Industrial Revolution. Between 1770 and 1840, output per worker grew by 46%. But the workers themselves weren't the ones who primarily benefited from that productivity growth. It was the owners of, as Marx liked to put it, the owners of capital, right? It was the factory owners. It was the new industrialists who primarily benefited. Now, eventually, the rest of everybody else benefited because it's kind of hard to argue with, right? We all benefited from automation in factories, and now we have everything we could never have imagined, right? 100, 200 years ago.
On the whole, society, yes. More efficient, more GDP, everybody benefits.
Right. Yeah. But during that whole process, those decades, it was really disruptive and caused a lot of problems for workers who either had to figure out how to retrain or they lost their jobs, and there wasn't any sort of safety net at that time. So it was even worse, right? So that's kind of the gist of this article, and there's some specific jobs that are called out in here. 3.5 million Americans work as cashiers, but Amazon now has stores that they're testing that have no cashiers. There's obviously truck drivers, like automated trucks could reduce the number of truck drivers that are necessary. You could have one driver who pilots a caravan of 10 trucks that are all following each other. So now you just need 1/10 the number of drivers, that sort of thing. So I guess it's just a cautionary tale of, yes, this is going to create enormous efficiencies and productivity gains, and we will all be better off when it happens. But while it's happening, there's going to be a lot of potential unrest. And if you ask me, the political unrest we're seeing now is actually just a preview of what is to come, because a lot of the disaffected folks in our society are people who lost their jobs to manufacturing automation over the last 40 years, right? So imagine what will happen when service industries or professional work or office work is automated to that extent. Something big to think about, like long term. And the tie-in, of course, to accounting is that I think McKinsey says that something like 40 to 50% of accounting work can be automated.
Yeah, every time you see an article about automation or jobs or what jobs are at the most risk, it's accounting and bookkeeping is always like number one on those lists. And And what's the interesting thing with this is we're past the labor piece of this, the physical labor, right? Like if I have a swimming pool business, people think I would be insane if I hired people to dig the swimming pool with shovels. Right? Like it's so common now. Of course you can use a backhoe, even though, hey, that's 10 people that don't have jobs because I have a backhoe digging the swimming pool, right? But we're entering this new world where it's all the mental jobs.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where it's people that have never been affected by this before are the ones getting affected now.
And to extend your analogy, right, traditional bookkeeping with data entry, where you're keying in transactions, that's the equivalent of digging a swimming pool with a shovel.
Yep.
But we're still doing it in a lot of businesses, and it's going to go away.
And so I think it's the natural course. It's just, you're right. People are not going to like it. It's going to be very disruptive.
So that's why I like that, somebody in the Democratic debates is bringing this issue up, because it may not be here now, but it is going to be one of the defining challenges of our generation, figuring out what to do with the people who are displaced. And do we retrain them? Do we simply, give them cash? Do we, what do we do? What is going to work the best? And not many people are talking about it.
But I mean, essentially Trump won because he spoke to people who lost their jobs due to manufacturing. Yeah. Yang's trying to speak to people that might lose their jobs in the future. And it's a different, it's going to be harder for him to make that argument.
Yeah. Well, I think he's just trying to talk to the people who are making policy right now to avert further problems. Because we didn't, when we shifted all of our manufacturing offshore, we didn't think long term about the impact of that. Right? Nobody was out there saying, well, what is going to happen to these communities long term? It was all just short term gain. So now there's all this, effort to bring manufacturing back, but now it's all automated. So even if you do bring it back, there's not a lot of jobs to be had. So it's and on that note,
a bigger challenge, yes, with raising kids. It's like, what do you tell your kids to be?
Right, and the jobs that they think they might have, right, might not even exist. Everyone wants to be a firefighter when they're a kid, right? That's the stereotype. Well, what if we have firefighting robots?
No. Everybody wants to be a YouTube star.
Star.
And now apparently bots are making YouTube videos. So those people, that career's dead.
And I think this just shows that an investment in education is the best thing we could do, because lifelong learning is what allows you to survive in a constantly changing economic environment. You aren't going to learn how to do one thing in school and then do that for your career. I mean, that's been true for a lot of people in the professional world, I think, for a long time, but maybe that hasn't been true for a long time. For a long time, it used to be you could just, go major in accounting, get a job, have that job for 40 years, doesn't change much, done, right? I don't think that exists anymore.
Not in the same way it used to. No. You have to be dynamic, and there's constantly new jobs being created. But you're right. If you don't have the ability to learn or to have the energy to learn something, it's difficult. And I also think this is going to have a lot of impact on age demographics. It's really hard to tell somebody that's 58 years old, they're 7 to 10 years away from retirement. Go retrain yourself and get a new job. And somebody's going to have to take care of those people. I don't have the answers.
That's it for me. We will continue to search for those answers in upcoming episodes of the Cloud Accounting Podcast. David, where should people go to connect with you online and to continue this discussion? If you have solutions, I'd love to hear them.
Solutions, because this has turned into the political podcast. I think Elizabeth Warren made it. Andrew Yang made it. We talked about the debates. It turned into the politics podcast here this week. Best way to get a hold of me is going to be on Twitter. I'm at David Leary.
And I am at Blake T. Oliver, and I would love to hear what you think about any of these issues. If you think I'm an idiot, if you think these are good ideas, if you've got something to suggest that we haven't even thought of, we don't know what we don't know. And please do consider subscribing to our show notes. You can go to blakeoliver.com, and if you click on the blue subscribe banner, you'll get subscribed to the show notes. They go out every week after the episode drops, and it has a link to the episode webpage where you can click on all the links that we talk about.
I think that's a wrap.
Thanks, David. Great to talk, and talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.